Welcome to Raising Eight, the podcast that proves a full house is more than just a TV show. Meet the dad who's raised 8 kids and 2 grandkids under one roof and has the scars and dad jokes to show for it. Grab a cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and let's talk family, big family.
Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. This is Raising 8, episode 7. If you did not see episode 6, part 1 and 2, you really need to do that. I had a great guest on named Todd Sarner, and he, kind of took things from more of the professional or the scientific area of kids and parents and things like that. And he works with parents that have children. And so go back and look at that if you haven't seen it. It was a great episode. You know how to get a hold of me through social media, or you can email me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. So episode 7. So the last the last solo podcast I did, we were talking about the kids getting in a little bit of trouble in high school. And I probably didn't cover every time they did, and it doesn't matter at this point. I think the point to that was if you've had kids or if you're going to have kids or you have kids now, that can be a time when kids kind of try to find their place in life and maybe do some things that they shouldn't do, probably just like you did when you were a teenager. Just if you're watching this, I adjusted my lights a little bit and my camera, so you're getting a little bit more of me, which could be bad or good, depends. But anyway, I want to touch base on, so I want to go back to elementary school, and we just have the 5 kids at home. That would be my 3 and my wife's 2 children, and they're going to elementary school. And something that you parents, if you don't have kids yet, you're gonna run into this. And if you had kids, you're gonna cringe when I tell you this. When you walked into my house, I had put hooks on the entryway for all the kids to hang their backpacks on. So they would come home from school, get a snack or whatever, and they would, take their backpacks into the kitchen or wherever, do their homework if they had any, and then they'd hang their backpacks back on these hooks, and they were all in order of age. And my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, we would get the backpacks and go through them. And if there was a pink slip of paper in there, a pink sheet of paper, you would immediately cringe. Now, what that pink slip of paper meant is that somebody in the class or our kids, something was wrong with them. Foot and mouth disease, pink eye, lice, which was the worst. We'll talk about lice just for a minute, and not because I like lice, because my poor wife, it wasn't my wife at the time, but have to go through the kids' hair with these little combs and this lice spray, and we'd have to, put all their stuffed animals in sheets and quarantine, and they'd have to wash. There was all this whole mess, and all of our daughters had long hair, so it was so daunting for us when that would happen. I shouldn't say for us, because all I did is sat there and did whatever my wife told me to do. I didn't know how to deal with it, and she would deal with it and have to comb the stuff out of the girls' hair. It was horrible. So when we got that pink slip, it was like, oh my God, what the hell? And it might have been, like I said, it could have been pink eye or strep throat or something like that. Like somebody in the class had that. So my 3 daughters at the time, I don't know why just these 3 daughters have these horrible problems with their tonsils, and they would get strep throat relatively easy. The other kids, I don't think kids got it, but my kids would always seem to have strep throat. And I'm telling you, you'd look into their throat and their tonsils are touching. I mean, it was crazy. So I take them to the doctor and say, don't you just take tonsils out? Like when I was a kid, they just took them out and gave you ice cream for 2 days. And they said, no, we don't do that anymore. But the thing is, we had to deal with the strep throat several times. In fact, my daughter just had it like 3 weeks ago. She had strep throat. So we were all on the lookout. I've never had strep throat. I'm not sure if my wife has, but just those 3 kids are the only ones that get it. Now, the problems that we cause is obvious. If they had strep throat, we kind of had to quarantine them in the house. They couldn't be, we couldn't be loving on them. We couldn't be doing anything like that. The other kids would have to stay away from them because we don't want any other kids getting strep throat. But unfortunately, at times when a kid gets sick, everybody gets sick. And now you got everybody, maybe yakking or doing whatever. and it was always this daunting thing. So as the kids get older, they're all playing sports. Every one of my kids played sports, and most of them had an injury or two that we'd have to deal with as well. And that meant trips to the doctor. That meant, so some examples, we had, I think someone fell off the bed one time and broke their wrist. So we had them in a cast for a while. My big kids, my youngest of the big kids, older kids, um, broke her wrist. I believe she broke it doing gymnastics. She was really good gymnast. And at the time, her benefits were through the Navy because her mother was married to a Navy guy, so they get benefits. So she'd go and get a cast on her wrist and then have to, and they'd take it off like in 3 weeks, which I always thought it was like 6 weeks. But look, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what to do. And it would seem she just keep re-injuring it. I don't know. She might have had a cast on 5 or 6 times. It was nuts. And she'd go back to gymnastics for a little bit, and boom, she'd mess up her wrist again. And it just kind of never set. So we had that to deal with. And she played softball in the past. I think before the gymnastics, we had we had a person that ran track. One of our kids ran track, and she also played soccer. She played club soccer. She's a really good soccer player. And we would when she was running track, she I think she set a record as a freshman in a 200-meter run. And after a while, she hurt her hip. Somehow she injured her hip. And so soccer was done, track was done, and she never really got back into playing sports. And these are just all these things you got to deal with is when you have kids. We had one of Kit's oldest daughter was doing gymnastics, very good at gymnastics, and did a somersault, and her elbow and arm went in the wrong way. So she snapped her elbow basically in half. And I think she still has a screw in it from then. So her gymnastics days were over. Although she went on to play lacrosse and did very well in lacrosse. And so did I had another daughter that played lacrosse too, one of my daughters, and they both did very well. So it's funny as you're managing these kids' personalities. Some of them are very competitive. Some of them played sports just because they wanted to play sports for the fun, for the camaraderie, or for whatever. And then you had some kids like me that are crazy competitive, and it's competitive to a fault. I mean, I still to this day, if I play tennis or something, I haven't played tennis in a while, but when I was playing tennis, I was very competitive. I get very angry at myself for not playing the way I wanted to. So again, this is all managing these personalities, right? We were not the type of parents that would go to a game and get involved in the game. When I was a kid, my dad would not let me play Little League because of how mean the parents were to everybody and how involved they got. So I didn't get to play baseball until I moved to Poway when I was older. Um, but I was not allowed to play those organized sports. I did play Pop Warner for a year, and the parents weren't too bad. But we weren't those parents, right? I used to, if I was starting to feel like I was getting really competitive, I would leave and go to the other side of the field and pace and watch my kids play from that side of the field. But when your kids are playing, you have to let them. You got to let them play. You got to let refs make mistakes, umpires make mistakes, and things like that. And I did get involved. I think I told you I was involved with my son playing football, which was not a good idea for me to be involved with my son playing football. However, I did help out with softball when one of my daughters played, and I tried to get involved in coaching. I can tell you that in addition to all those sports and things in the dad's club that we started, I was also a brownie leader. Now, no, I didn't wear the skirt. No, I didn't do any of that. But we did. All the kids wanted to be in a brownie troop or Girl Scouts or something, but because of their different ages, I would have had to take them to like 4 different troops. So what we did is I started a troop on my own, and then the girls that weren't at that age group could still participate. And the rules were this: I had to have my treasurer was a woman, and her kids would come to the meetings. And then any child that came was not allowed to be left there. The mom or dad had to stay there and be involved in the craft or whatever we're doing. I'm not very crafty, so these wonderful mothers took over that piece of that and did all the crafting and stuff with them. So I really was just kind of the administrator. And when I went to get my license for the Girl Scouts, you have to go down to San Diego and do background checks and fingerprinting and all that, which I did, obviously. And they told when I got there, they asked me, "Can I help you?" I said, "I want to be a brownie leader." And the gal looks at me and says, "Yeah, I don't think you can be a brownie leader because you're a man." I said, "Well, you might want to check that." Just so she goes in the back room, talks to somebody, and comes out and says, "Oh yeah, you can do it." So I had my license. I had a troop for 2 years. Um, we sold 1,200 boxes of cookies. A lot of the girls that were in the dad's club, were part of the group. And we even had our picture in the paper for selling all these cookies. So the kids stepped up and did a good job. So let's go back to medical stuff. So yes, we had some kids with injuries, a couple broken wrists, um, dislocated elbow. And then we had a really unfortunate incident happen to my youngest daughter. She I get up for she had been at a camp for a week. I think it was for something for school. Uh, I can't remember what it was for. The kids that hold the signs up at school, like crossing guard. She went to crossing guard camp, and when she got back, actually she got back on like a Friday or a Saturday. I think she got back on a Friday, and we went to the fair. The fair was going on at the time, and it was really hot. I remember, and we went, and everybody was doing fine. So Monday morning, I wake up and I look at her, I'm eating breakfast, and I'm like, you know what? You don't look too good. How do you feel? She says, I'm kind of, I don't feel great. I said, well, I'm going to tell you what, when I come home from work, I'm going to take you to the doctor if you're not feeling better because you don't look right. It's just something, your kids, you just don't look right. So I leave for work, and my oldest daughter says, you know what? She was really thirsty. So she went and got her this gigantic, like big gulp Slurpee. So she drinks the big gulp Slurpee, hoping it was going to feel better, getting her some liquids in her. Um, and I'm on my way to work, and I worked in El Cajon at the time. And about 15 minutes into my drive, I said, you know what? She did not look good. I'm going to take her to the doctor right away. So I turn my car around, I come home, and I take her to the doctor, and they start freaking out. And I'm like, what is going on here? So they're moving around. They got, code this, code that, whatever. And they get her. And I'm like, hey, what the hell is, because I took her not to an emergency room, I took her to urgent care. And they said, look, we need to get an ambulance for your daughter. Her blood sugar is off the charts. I'm like, what do you mean? She says, and why is her tongue red? I said, oh, she had a Slurpee. And she goes, why did you give her a Slurpee? I said, I was just trying to get liquids. My daughter was trying to get liquids in her body. Come to find out, she's a type 1 diabetic, and we never knew. She was having some instances, with different things, but as a parent, you kind of just you kind of blow it off. Now I feel dumb now that happened. And so they get her in an ambulance. She goes down. I follow her down in an ambulance. And again, the nurse is like, why is her tongue red? What's going on? And her blood. So your blood levels for you that aren't diabetics, or for you that are, should be between 80 and 180. When you check your blood, there's a meter you use, and it should be 80 and 180. Her blood level was 900. So she could have died. I mean, it was, I still just get choked up thinking about it because we didn't know what to do. So we get her into Children's Hospital. She gets settled in. I'm calling my wife. I'm calling everybody. Said we got to help her out. This and that. She's 11. She's scared. I'm sure at the time, and we haven't never really talked about it, but she was scared. And now we have to learn how to manage a diabetic, which we know nothing about. Right? I have no clue what diabetes even is. So I'm reading up on it. They're giving us classes, and they're basically telling us she's not going home until you guys know what the hell to do. Which I'm like, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. So that started a whole, another thing that we had to consider when feeding her, and what she can and can't eat and things like that. And we got a life lesson really quick about diabetes, and not that I even ever wanted to know, but I would know the signs now if I was talking to a mother or father and they were telling me. So that it wasn't daunting on our family, but we definitely had to make some adjustments. At the time, we had a trailer, so that was always kind of nice because if we went somewhere, I could take her insulin with us and we could put it in a refrigerator. And we had to take her to the doctor on a regular basis, and we took her to some support groups and things like that. So that was an interesting, kind of a medical emergency that we learned about. And of course, a type 1 diabetic, you're a diabetic your entire life. So she has to live with that now on a regular basis and manage it on her own as an adult. And that was it was a scary time because I had no clue, right? Sometimes your kids get sick, and when we were kids, they just kind of blew it off. I don't remember as many kids getting seriously sick when I was a child as they are now. And of course, you can look at the recent news about medications we've been taking and shots we've been taking and things like that. And that could have been a result of that. The foods we eat are different. So it was kind of a scary time. So now she has to manage this at school. She's using an EpiPen or regular drawing uh, thing, and she had this little tiny needle that she would use. But the problem with it is she had to take insulin all the time, right? She'd check her blood, then she'd have to measure how much insulin she's taking. And listen, I don't wish that upon anybody. It's a daunting task to have to live with diabetic as a diabetic, and so, but she deals with it, and it's very one of those difficult things. And it's that thing, and you're as a father or a parent, you cannot control. It's you're watching this. It's the speed wobbles on the hill I talked about on the skateboard. You can't fix those. You can't catch her before she falls. So when your child has any kind of, and I'm so empathetic to and sympathetic to a lot of people that have kids with some type of disease or special needs and things like that, because it's daunting on you as a person. Um, in the last podcast I did with Todd Sarner, we talked about parents trying to kind of, they have their own identity. And a lot of times and I've said this in the podcast, and I said, listen, if you're a salesperson, that's not who you are. That's what you do. I'm a parent. That's who I am. I've been a parent for 39 years almost now. So as we're moving closer to the kids growing up and moving out, we got a couple kids that have left at this point. I'm just kind of zooming forward. Um, we're pretty much past high school and everything like that. My one of my daughters is having some stuff going on in her life. So she at the time has a son, and we decided that we really needed to step in and help her out and help him out, so he'd be in the safest, most productive situation he could be in. So we take my grandson in, and he was 2 years old at the time. So he was born so 2009. We also had my stepfather living with us, who my mom had passed away in 1997. So now we have an elderly person living with us. We had remodeled the house and built him a granny flat. And now we have, I don't know, 3 or 4 kids. I can't even keep track anymore. 3 or 4 kids at home, plus a grandson and grandpa, right? Grandpa Ski. Now, Grandpa Ski is completely okay on his own. He's driving himself to this, but he's at that age where he's going to start to, fail at certain levels and things like that. So we're taking care of him. So now we still have the same big group of kids most of the time, and we've got a grandson now, and we're thinking, 6 months, a year tops with the grandson that we'd have him. She'll get everything worked out, get everything together. But it didn't work out that way. So now we've had Carson for 16 years. He's just turned 18 this year. And so we raised him through his entire thing. So now I'm going back to school, same school, by the way, Garden Road. But now I'm back as a grandfather, not a parent. And although we have the same responsibilities and tasks to do and all these things, it's different. It's just, you know, uh, my attitude's different in life. I'm in a different place in my life career wise. Um, I know all the teachers because most of the teachers were still there. So they're kind of watching out for Carson and taking care of him and doing things like that. And so that was good. And we were having a good time taking him to church, doing everything we did for the other kids. But now I'm not 30 years old anymore. I'm not 35 years old anymore. And um, so that adds a little, I don't know if I want to say stress. It's just different. I kind of had we all have this version or this vision of how it's going to be to have kids and how they're going to grow up and what's going to happen. And we have this version or vision of what marriage is going to be like. And we had been talking a lot, communicating a lot, my wife and I, about where we were going to be when my youngest was 21 years old. When she was 21, I'd be 55, right? And I think that's the right math. Anyway, we thought about opening a business. We thought we'd be moving and downsizing and this and that, but still, now we still have. Um, in 2010, my stepfather passed away, and I still have kids at home, and I have a grandson. And now I have to rethink of my life, right? What am I going to do? Now I have this child I need to take care of. I need to give him everything he needs and do all that. So my mind is going back to being a parent, right? You're always a parent. I heard something on I saw a Brady Bunch clip today when Greg comes up to his mom and says, I'm 16. When are you gonna stop worrying about everything I do? And she says, when you're 60. And that's the truth. You never stop worrying about your kids. You never stop being a parent. So fast forward to about 2013, one of my daughters has one of our grandkids, and she is with a person, and they're doing things they probably shouldn't be doing. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to tell you who it is. And as we move forward with that, her daughter needs to be helped taken care of, and her too. Her and her baby daddy had broken up, and now we take on another grandchild at 1 year old. Yeah, she's a little over 1 years old. So now we've got my grandson in the house, I've got a granddaughter in the house, and I've got a daughter in the house that's the mother of this granddaughter. And I think I might have had another daughter there at the same time. I don't know, man. It's hard to kind of go back and think of, and it's not important. What's important is how this fatherly instinct kicks in, right? I'm talking about dads, not moms, and how I'm taking on a responsibility, which I didn't have to, but I felt like there was no other choice, and the kids were best with us, right? We're pretty boring people. So we had very much a routine in our life, and it hadn't changed much since it was kind of like there was just kids in the house with different names, right? We were still ate at the same time, went to work at the same time, and did all those things. Went to school, went to, back to school nights and PTA, did homework, did all this stuff. Same thing we were doing forever. But now we're continuing to do it because we have grandkids at home. And um, again, and we're graduating kids out of high school. Everybody graduated from high school except one, but she went back and got it squared away. And so here I am now, and it's like when I have to pick up my granddaughter today from school. Now I don't get out of the car anymore. She's in junior high. But when I did, I'm talking to parents that are my kids' age or younger, and teachers that are my kids' age or younger. And it changes your perspective on things, right? I can tell you that, and I'm just going to have this in my next normal podcast about you just tend to not worry about little things as much as I used to, right? Little things used to make me mad, they used to blow me up. And I'm 63 years old. When somebody 63-year old says they don't care about something, they probably don't really care. I mean, it's not affecting me in any way. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to hear about it. I see these celebrities on TV talking, and I don't care about them either. I don't care about their opinion. They don't care about mine. And frankly, I keep my opinion mostly to myself, except for my podcast. And I don't talk about politics or religion generally. So you're really only getting my opinion right now about being a father and how it felt for me to do all these things I had to do. I want to reiterate two things to you. One, I am not a parental expert by any means. And my next podcast is going to have a clinical psychologist that's going to talk about parents, how they relate and how they empower their kids and how they empower themselves and things like that. And it's a big deal. And then I have another podcast scheduled when we talk about education. And that's a big deal. And I just want to make you understand that I'm not complaining about being a parent. It's the number one most successful thing. Let me rephrase that. The most two successful things I'm proud of in my life is my marriage now and being a parent, right? In my vision, we have a great marriage. Other people might not think so. They may not care. They may get sick of me hearing it. They may be sick of me telling people. We have a very good relationship. We talk about things mostly, sometimes we don't, but we kind of know each other's buttons to push and things like that. And we try not to do that. And being a parent to this day, I'm still wicked, wicked crazy proud of my children. And every one of them, even the ones that aren't performing at the level I think they should be performing at. And that's another thing I was going to mention is we all, when you have children or you've had children or whatever, you have a picture of what that child's life is going to look like, right? Oh, they're going to be a doctor or a veterinarian, whatever. And you have this image of how they're going to act and treat their kids and things like that. And that's not always, first of all, it's never right, right? What I pictured my kids doing and what they're doing wasn't even close. But you just do that. That's just us in general in life. When you get a new job, you picture how the job's going to be. A lot of times it's not that way. You may picture, we try to anticipate what's going to happen in life, and we really need to be able to, you know, manage that. Tony Robbins talked about you can't put a plane on autopilot to Hawaii, for instance, because of the trade winds. You have to have a pilot that's adjusting that plane all the time. That is going to be your life. I don't care what you do. That's going to be your life. You got to adjust and you have to just, and conquer that way. So the kids, as far as high school went, everybody managed pretty well. They got decent grades. Some did better than others. Some learned different than others. That's something we're going to be talking about in a future podcast about how kids just assimilate information differently. And it's almost impossible for a teacher to handle, 20, 25, 30 kids and try to teach them one way when most of them are learning in a different way. And if the teacher's not a great teacher, she or he is even gonna have more problems. We haven't had any real horrible teachers. I had a couple in elementary school I wish the kids never got as a teacher, but it's not even worth talking about because it went by so quick. And it didn't really matter. I know that I started one of my children a little earlier than I should have in school. Something you should consider if you're going to be new parents. You got to make sure they're ready to go, emotionally and intellectually and everything. And I think one of my daughters, I could have waited a little bit. Her birthday was kind of right on the cusp, and she could have waited till the next year. But at the time, I made a decision with the information that I had. And this is something I want to reiterate to you too. I was working for a company once, and the owner had two kids that worked in the company, and they were 30, 32, 30, whatever, in their early 30s. And we were talking one day, and I said, your kids are super intelligent, no doubt about it. There's no lack of intelligence here whatsoever. But I said, you understand, you and I, when we were 30 years old, we made decisions differently. We weren't as good as we are now about information and how to assimilate it and patience and things like that. So when you're making decisions in your past, when you look back being 30 years old, 25, 35, whatever, and now you're 50, 60, could be 70 years old, I don't know. You were thinking different way. You had a different thought process back then. You weren't as patient as you are now, probably. My stepdad used to tell me, before you make a major purchase, wait 7 days. And I kind of took on that thing, that thought process. And it's true. If you wait 7 days, you generally don't buy it. A lot of times with decisions we had to make for our kids, we could have waited a little bit longer and been a little bit more patient. But we made decisions like we were 30, and that's because we were 30. Going back to this guy I worked for, his kids, if they're still in the business and they're progressing, I know that they're making more sound decisions now because they're older. And you're just going to do that. And this is something your kids are going to drive you crazy because they're going to make some rash decisions when they're younger. And you're going to say, God, I wish you would have asked me about that, or you should have done it this way. Well, you got to let them make decisions and make mistakes, just like this wobbling skateboard, right? Because they're going to make decisions with the best decision they can make with the information they have. And a lot of times we make hasty decisions because we don't have enough information. Now, I want all the information before I'm going to make a decision. And you'll get no emotional response from me or an answer until I have all this information, period. Now, what will happen is my kids will ask me a question and I'll say, well, you need this information. Then they go, boom, they make the decision. And sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. But they're adults and that's their prerogative. They can do that. So anyway, at this point, I have one or two anyway. So now we're raising grandkids, and society is so much different. The way they teach kids is so much different. We have social media we have to manage. We have all these other things, and thank God, Carson. Well, I wasn't supposed to say any names. Thank God, my grandson has graduated. He graduated early from school because he didn't want to be there, and just like me, he took the initiative and graduated early from school. So he's now an adult and he can make decisions that drive me nuts on a regular basis. But he's 18 and he's an adult and legally he can make these decisions. So I say good luck to him in this society. It's way different than it used to be. So we're managing a sixth grader now, and everybody's fine. Everything's going great. It's just that my life is not, at my age, I'm not built to have a sixth grader, but we have her, and so I'm going to do everything I can to make her succeed. She goes between her aunt's and our house, and her aunt is uh, much younger than me, but not too much. She's like, I don't know. I'm not going to tell her. I don't even know her age, but I know she's younger than me. She's younger than my wife too. But super intelligent CEO, rock star when it comes to that. So we're all on the same page with making my granddaughter successful, and they do a lot. They actually do a lot more than me when it comes to, well, for sure on finances. And but we're kind of equal and we're kind of on the same page and everything. So let me tell you, I've told you before, parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's the thing I'm most proud of when it comes to my kids is how good they're doing and how smart they are and how good decisions they're making. They're very responsible. They're with their kids all the time. They do a lot of things with their kids, probably more one-on-one stuff than I did, just because I had so many kids. My son has six children in Texas, and he's just killing it out there. I'm not going to go through every kid, but they're all doing very good. So, all right, we'll wrap this up. Um, I will do a couple more solo podcasts, but I got a question for you. If anybody's listening to this that has a mother that would like to come on my podcast of any age, she can have young kids, her kids could be grown or whatever. And the best person to have on my podcast would be a mom that's a teacher. And there's a reason for that. And if I can get a mother on here that's a teacher, or could have been a teacher, she didn't have to be a teacher right now. I think it'd be an uh, interesting view of what she thinks about dads, right, in class and things like that. And it would kind of go back to what I'm kind of talking about, what a father's perspective is on parenting versus a mother's. And if, like I said, if she's a mom and a teacher, even better. So this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast, Raising Eight, episode 7. Keep listening. I'm getting tons of views on this. Share it, share. If you go to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and keep watching the full episodes or the clips or whatever you're doing. I'm getting a lot of traction. I'm probably getting 10 times or at least 5 times the views I was getting before. So if you have a child that's having kids, you can let them listen to this. If I bore them to death, have them listen to clips so they're shorter. And if you know, if you know somebody that could benefit from some wisdom about raising kids, I know that I'm not really giving you answers all the time. I'm just giving you my advice and kind of what I went through. Because you know what? There's no right answers. That's the problem with this. It's kind of like talking to a clinical psychologist. Yes, they have theories about how you can fix your life, but you've got to find your own way. And I think that the last thing I'll leave you with, as far as a advice, is you have to be that relationship is key. I've told you that before. If you don't have that, you have to be the best version of yourself before you can take care of your kids. So make sure you're paying attention to your health and things like that. And it's your whole life isn't about your kids. Your whole life has to be about you, and then you can take care of kids. So contact me at edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com or go to my social media. You can DM me and get a hold of me that way. But I appreciate you listening. There's much more to come. And make sure you're looking out for my regular podcast too, which is just called Ed Franklin No Limits. Um, it's not the Raising Eight piece, and this is all under the same umbrella, but keep listening. Enjoy your weekend. And by the way, today is Daughter's Day. If you have a daughter, wish her happy Daughter's Day. And I'm doing that right now. So I'm going to find out which kids are listening to my podcast. I'm going to wish you all happy Daughter's Day, and then you can text me thank you. So if you're not listening, if I don't get a thank you, then I got to text you and tell you to listen to my podcast. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you all soon.